Hello again and welcome to another episode of Fun and Games Podcast. I'm Case Aiken.
I'm Neil Smith.
And today we're doing a bit of a certain point of view round robin. I'm normally the host of another past podcast, and that's an interview show, so I wanted to bring a friend of mine who is a very enthusiastic gamer to talk about streaming video games.
Definitely love games, and I am starting to stream as well.
This has been a topic we've been talking about for a while, but then this week we happen to have an extra little sort of nugget to discuss, which is that Google just announced that they're launching their own streaming platform, which isn't streaming the viewing.
Streaming the games.
Exactly.
Yes.
That is crazy.
It is crazy. It's definitely going to be interesting.
Like, I've been hearing people talk about this idea for forever. I've been seeing like systems to set up to stream from your computer to another device, and usually there's like an issue with like lag, or the games have to be a certain kind of simplicity or things like that. But they're promising some pretty crazy stuff.
Promising 1080p and 4K at launch. 60 frames per second.
Yeah, so Stadia, this is what it's called.
Stadia, yes.
Yeah, so this is kind of exciting, and there's some like ideas in play about it that I didn't even really think about when people started talking about it. Like it being Google, they own YouTube.
Yes, I could definitely see it being something a lot of people can get used to doing. It's they want it to be for everybody. They said games for everybody, anywhere.
The internet has been a really interesting component of video games in general. Like going back to the first launch of like Flash games and people just being able to have that sort of shared experience and sort of like tap into it. Then we get into like download services. Starting with like the Xbox. Maybe with the original Xbox and like PlayStation 2 era, but definitely with like Xbox 360, PS3, that era of gaming, and with the Wii, with the Virtual Console, that became like a staple of console gaming in a way that like it had already become a staple of PC gaming with Steam and other services like that, or BattleNet for Blizzard games. Mm-hmm. And so it's like really exciting to see this sort of concept that has been like, all right, well, you can just get the games on your hardware wherever. Like you can just easily get it. You don't need to like find a copy at a store.
You don't need hardware. You don't need anything.
I know, that's the crazy part.
The cheapest computer they said they bought and tested for $300 ran the game at 1080p, 60 frames per second.
I'm wondering if eventually this is their way of like connecting to Chromecasts and making that a component of video gaming where it's just like
they want you to play anywhere.
Yeah,
for sure. It's going to be interesting. I'm going to try it. They're saying 2019 launch, so that's something I can definitely see myself getting into.
Yeah. Now you're interested in that, and like I've been fascinated with this as a concept because of the idea of like drop-in gaming, things like that. But you dabbled in actual streaming, just media of games, and that's sort of what I initially wanted to talk to you about. Mm-hmm. But this news has sort of like created a much more hypothetical approach to this conversation than I had initially thought it to be.
Yeah, I've been streaming for a little bit now. I play on Xbox One, but I stream through the PC. It's fun, but it's definitely hard to do at the same time. Interacting with people. I don't have a big following yet, but I'm trying to get there. It's definitely something that takes a lot of hard work to gain followers. Mm-hmm. You either have to be really good at the game or you know how to entertain people. And I guess when you're first starting out, every game is so saturated with people that you have to try to do something different to, I guess, get your name out there and stuff like that.
Yeah, like I've talked to people about video game streaming, and we've got a bunch of people on Certain Point of View who do. One of the regular hosts of this show, Matt Storm, is a game streamer, and Ben Milton on the Certain Point of View flagship show is also a streamer. And it's cool to like check in and watch them sometimes. They've done the charity events like Extra Life, like those have been really fun to sort of like be supportive of and to view. But for me, I'm a dabbler. Like I enjoy watching it from time to time, sort of like background stuff. But it there's just so much media. It's really hard for me to like really focus on it. And when I tell other people about it, particularly say my significant other, the response is why.
Yeah, I always get funny looks when I'm watching streams at home and she sees Dr. Disrespect on the screen and he's yelling at somebody or yelling at the game, breaking something. But I enjoy watching people every now and again. It's especially games that I don't play particularly. I watch people play those games.
So let's break down the different reasons to watch that. I think that's sort of a fun point. So let's start with the games you like and why you watch them.
Okay. I'm pretty much an FPS gamer, first-person shooter. Call of Duty is my main game. I've been playing that for years, ever since Call of Duty 3, and then basically revolutionized once Modern Warfare came out. But
now, would you say you mostly watch like the matches, or do you watch people playing the single player game?
Not single player as much, but esports is a whole new thing that just started about a couple of years ago. Longer than that, but
yeah,
for Call of Duty, it's just gotten big a couple of years ago. But I do watch competitively. People play. More so games that I don't play, I usually watch people, like more storyline based games.
Okay.
Like Assassin's Creed or Jurassic World, stuff like that.
And you would say, would you say you're doing that to just get the experience of playing a game that you wouldn't necessarily have time to play? Or?
Yeah, because I don't have that much time to play games, but when I do, I pretty much play the one or two games that I enjoy playing. So, but I am interested in those games. Like I said, I don't have time to play them. So, I enjoy watching other people.
Yeah, I mean, another show on this network, Reignite, is a sort of like a book club. It's a video game club for Mass Effect. Matt, one of the co-hosts of this show, is also a co-host on that show, and he and MJ Bradley Lestrange go through, and each episode of the show is them discussing their experiences of playing that video game. So I think there is something to just like, here's this narrative and here's how we're going to approach it together, like our thoughts and whatnot. And if you're watching a streamer who's sort of discussing how they're experiencing a thing, there's that component too. It's sometimes it's more Mystery Science Theater 3000 where a guy's making fun of the story. Sometimes it's more just like sort of an introspective look on it all and being like, oh, this is a really cool thing they're doing, or a really positive thing. And maybe that's better for like the breakdowns after the fact and not so much like live play, because plenty of these people are running like horror games and just being like, is this actually scary? I mean, like there's some pretty famous streamers or Let's Players that that's their bread and butter, just having goofy reactions to things.
I find that entertaining.
So we've got people who do it over actual just matches, and then there's that sort of like sports component to it, which is sort of exciting to be sort of like viewing effectively an athlete, like and sort of getting their thoughts, because like what are they talking about, what are they saying, because they're not the player, so you can't. It's not like when you're watching a boxing match and you can see their faces, how they're reacting to things. Like they like the player in this case, the person who's actually participating in the event, is their own commentator. And you get other commentator kind of things too, like Smash Brothers or Street Fighter or any of these like big like fighting games will have people doing like live commentary like it was a boxing match. Like those kind of streams exist too.
Yeah.
So there's that sort of like watching the sport of it, and it's weird words to say talking about that. Like I get it, and it's not something that everyone can do, but it is also it's a not physical.
Yeah, it's not easy.
But there is a physical component. There's the reflexes part. There's the twitch part of it.
You have to constantly be looking at your chat. You got to be looking at the game. So it's definitely a major multitasking experience that you have to be comfortable with, and just. It takes time to get the hang of it. I mean, I know there's times when I was streaming and I'm just playing the game. I keep forgetting to look at the chat, and people are talking. So it's like you want them to come back. You want them to feel like they're a part of something. So you have to keep them in mind too as well.
That's true. Yeah, especially for things where it's an experience that they could be having themselves. They're coming to you to see it actually played. I mean. Sure, there are people who are doing like speed runs where you might not actually focus that much on what they are saying about it. You're just watching them do a game really well.
Yeah.
But that is a specific subset as well. So like there's as much of it where it's the personality of the person doing it. Like are they selling themselves in a shared activity, the same way, kind of like when you're a kid and you're at an arcade watching people play, or when you're with your friends and I was talking to one person about it, and they were like, I really liked watching my older brother play video games.
Yeah.
And that's an understandable point. Like maybe for some people that's just a cathartic experience, like watching this sort of like system mastery in play without necessarily needing to be actively engaged with it, and just sort of enjoying spending time with that person. Like I've heard that described for Twitch a lot, and I find that sort of a cool kind of component. And like certainly a lot of like the internet age of media has been about like smaller scale people just sort of embracing the people that they like and enjoying those personalities. Like our podcast network is very much like, oh, I'm cool with hanging out, listening to these people talk and like sort of kind of being there with them in the conversation, even if I'm not participating.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And sometimes we are participating because we have a Discord channel where people can comment and yell at us.
Okay then.
So there's a lot of types of games though that people play on Twitch. Like I know that there's a big scene for video games, like Smash Brothers Melee is a big thing on there. There's people doing speed runs, as we talked about. There are people doing like JRPGs and other RPGs. But then there's other types of games too. Like there's people who like Geek and Sundry doing Critical Role, and like a very big component of doing like live play Dungeons and Dragons games started on Twitch. I know people play poker. Are there things I'm forgetting about? Like I don't really check in that often. So
as you may know, the real big thing right now is BR, Battle Royales.
Like
Fortnite,
like PUBG and Battle
Apex Legends. Call of Duty came out with their thing called Blackout. Those are a lot of the games I enjoy checking in on, particular on Twitch. I mostly watch guys on Twitch. This guy named Shroud, he's a real popular streamer, man. He's probably one of the best FPS shooters you'll ever watch. He's really entertaining to watch. He's on PC, and the way he's just 10 levels above everybody else out there. He can destroy anybody who walks in front of his face. Big BR, Fortnite is really big out there, and it's crazy how far that game has become.
Now, why do you think that is? Because I know that Fortnite sort of came in and stole PUBG's thunder.
Yes.
And I'm curious what set it apart and why it's so good for streaming specifically.
Kids, man.
Or is streaming the reason why it was set apart?
I think kids, man, they love that game. I think they're all tuned in. They want to know what's the new thing. How do you do this? How do you build this fortress that fast? And the skins, man. They came out with these skins, man. They're paying $20 for a skin to run around and play in, and everybody wants that top skin, And basically, I don't know, man. That game is taken off to a whole new level. I've never seen a game like this before. Like maybe Mario Brothers back in the day when we were younger, but
WoW had its wave. I wonder if a big chunk of it is just how the technology has grown with it. I bring up WoW, and I remember in college I watched a lot of videos of people doing like raids and stuff like that, and WoW and Heroes of the Storm is a big one for us too. So WoW and Heroes of the Storm are two that we do streaming for.
League of Legends is taken off too.
Yeah, well, League of Legends, but I'm saying internally for a certain point of view. But yeah, League of Legends is another good example, or Dota. Those sort of like, I forget what the name is, MOBAs. Yes. So those are also like kind of good for it because they're matches. And I guess with like WoW, there's like raids, although some people just tune in and just watch them.
Yeah.
Go around like gardening or other shit.
That's not my cup of tea, but yeah, I understand.
Yeah. But those all have changed with the technology. I mean, those used to be a little bit more difficult to get into. So or rather to watch. Like it used to be with Battle.net, you could tune in to people's matches, but you had to basically have the software. It was like, I think it was almost like rendering it in front of you.
Wow.
Because that was the way that it would show you how to do a thing, or like it would be clips on YouTube, but you wouldn't really be able to watch whole things. Like that's why you got like comedy sketches like the Leroy Jenkins sketch. But the technology has changed over time so that you can have it not only being broadcast, on this big platform for people to watch, and like Twitch has been going for about a decade now.
Yeah.
It was somewhere probably. I should have the date up in front of me, but it's probably more in the ballpark of like 12 years.
Probably,
since
yes.
since it first like launched and and became popular. I would say around 2009, like 2010. I think is the first time I heard about it. And so it's been like that's 9 years right there.
It's crazy. Like I don't even think I heard about it until like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So, it's definitely taken off. And
Yeah.
there's people making a lot of money on there.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing because it's very much it's TV in that regard. Like like the ways that they finance it are through advertising, but then also they add this component where like you don't have to be a paid viewer where you can
Subscription based.
Well, there's subscription bases, but there's like the token system where you can like specifically patronize the ones you like.
Donations, all that type of stuff.
Yeah. So what other kind of games do we see on Twitch? Like I cited that there's card games, so there's like actual gambling that you see.
Yeah,
there's Dungeons and Dragons and other kinds of like role playing games. Do you see board games very often?
I've seen some checkers on there.
Yeah.
People playing that. They actually have even a just chatting section now too, where people just go in there and just chat about games.
Yeah.
Not necessarily play them.
And I know, like, on these streaming platforms, and like I said, it's basically just TV because it's appointment viewing. Like, you can't, like, while you can watch the archives of stuff, like, the idea is to tune in live and watch it. Yeah. So I've seen, like, things that are basically just YouTube shows do their, like, premieres on YouTube. Like, Dragon Ball Z Abridged did their, like, they would do the premieres of, like, big episodes on Twitch, and it would be like fun to like tune in. They would like do Q&As leading up to the episode launch, and it'd be like do a countdown to like, all right, and now in 5, 4, and like there you go, and like it would be like big events. So as like a very democratized television component, like you can if you set up a station and you get people to be interested, all of a sudden you have a network and a show, like as opposed to like you have to find a studio and build that whole thing. And as opposed to YouTube, where it's really kind of like that's basically like a server to hold on to your archive of things. But Twitch having that live component, and YouTube has a live component now too, but that was created in response to Twitch.
Yeah. There's people on both platforms for sure. YouTube, I don't think is as big, but the big subscriber-based people, they probably have a good viewing on there. But.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to think because like everyone kind of de facto has a YouTube account, like in that if they have a Gmail address, they have access to it, and like who doesn't have at least some kind of component of that, be it like a personal Gmail that they use, or maybe they just have a YouTube account because they wanted to be able to subscribe and make a playlist or whatever service. Like Google's gonna get you somehow, so there's that. But I remember like what is it? Matt Mateo from Angry Video Game Nerd was talking one time on a stream that I was watching, and I was watching it on YouTube because I just happened to be on a device that had a YouTube app built into it, and I didn't have a Twitch app on it. But I was just watching gaming because I just needed to watch something in the background while I was doing some other work. Yeah. And he was answering questions while he was playing, which is the common way to do these things. And it was like, well, we started Angry Video Game Nerd as not actually as a YouTube show, but YouTube has been its home for a long time. It predates YouTube actually, as do a lot of things that are like still strong on YouTube. But because YouTube was their home for so long, that's been where they've sort of like set up shop, and that's sort of like their little niche where them being popular for another reason, their gaming thing is a side thing that they do on YouTube, as opposed to Twitch, where a lot of people Twitch is their starting point.
Yeah, and they also make videos on YouTube as well.
Right, they might put it up on YouTube, but Twitch is where they start.
Yep.
And internally, with certain point of view, we've debated back and forth about what's the best way to do streaming. Yeah. And I don't have a lot to say about it because I'm not involved enough either in the playing, because I really don't have time to do it, or in like, well, what's the best market? I can't really say because I'm a dabbler.
I mean, Twitch is obviously the best market to be in, but
is it the saturated market?
It is. It's very saturated. You will click on any game you want to watch, and you can scroll down and down and down and down until you see there's people with 0 viewers on there, and there's lots of them. So, I mean, if that's what you want to do, it's going to take work to get up to the top. But yeah, and every game I've clicked on and tried to watch, I try not to go to the big people because sometimes I want to interact with people. So I'll scroll down to the bottom to where somebody has like maybe 4 or 5, 15 viewers, and so I can actually talk to them and see, if they like the game, how is it, maybe you can play with them, find other friends that way too. So, another one out there is Mixer. I don't know if you heard of Mixer. Is actually Microsoft's own platform that they came up with.
I think I remember some announcement about it, and it was like part of like a larger either Xbox or just Microsoft.
It's a Microsoft-based app.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like once something's popular, everyone's trying to sort of ape it.
People who actually play on Xbox have actually been getting pretty big on there. There's a couple big people on there, gaining a lot of viewers. I'm actually trying it out myself.
Yeah. So let's shift gears to talking about like what makes a good streamer in general. Like we hit a few notes about it. Like we hit on being interactive with your audience. In some cases, being interesting and whatnot. But why don't we start with like who are some of the ones you like, and then why? Like what are they doing that's like a good thing for either an aspiring streamer or just for who to be checking out? Because like some people are just a little too raw.
One of the guys that I really find the most entertaining, in my opinion, is Dr. Disrespect. He may not be the best gamer in the world, but he definitely puts on a show with, he actually wears a mullet, puts on some Oakley glasses and calls them his Google prototype scopes. The way he plays the game, he's one of them guys that rages a lot. He likes to rage. He screams at little kids that are in his face, shooting at him. They call him, shut your flappy gums up, you little kid, and stuff like that. And he'll just, he knows how to entertain a lot of times. He's a good entertainer. He's not the best gamer, but he's a good entertainer. He has different green screens up. He'll have different cut scenes while he'll walk. Like he's the face of Twitch. He has a Twitch building up in the background, and he's got his helicopter up there, and he's up there entertaining people, just funny things. He's an older guy.
Yeah. So, all right. So he's got a shtick that he's doing. He's got a character that he puts on.
Yes.
You say he's got green screens going on, and I know the usual idea is to have a green screen behind the gamer so that they can be represented without like having a cutout.
Yes.
Like that's sort of like this archaic way of presenting it.
Like
he
has different scenes.
Right. So you saying that he has cut scenes is interesting to me. Like how does that work? Does he like finish a match and then goes off?
Finish a match. He'll press whatever button on his key to hotkey it to another screen. He'll walk over to his other screen. He'll have his locker room, his arena, he calls it. Or he'll walk over to another screen where he's driving his Lamborghini down a dark alleyway.
Now, are some of these like pre-recorded that he'd have to put in?
It's live.
It's all live?
It's some type of
He's driving a Lamborghini though.
Lamborghini.
No matter what.
The windows up cracked. I mean, you can obviously see a seat in the background, but like,
even if it's just like an SNL kind of like insert that he's putting over, I'm just surprised that he's able to pull it off as like a convincing enough sketch.
Whoever's making this stuff is doing a good job.
Yeah, his graphics team are doing a good job.
Yes, it's definitely interesting.
All right, so Dr. Disrespect is one you like. What? Let's rattle off a few other ones if you can, off the top of your head, that you like, and then let's sort of like talk about commonalities.
Okay. Tim the Tap Man is a good one. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He's a big guy, tattoos. He's always making people laugh. He makes me laugh a lot. He's a big BR guy as well. I think a lot of the top streamers right now, they're all pretty much BRs. BR gaming right now.
BR again being Battle Royale.
Battle Royale, yes. But he doesn't really do much. He just sits there and plays the game. But he makes a lot of jokes. He's really interactive with the chat and stuff. It's hard to describe what I really like. I just like somebody who enjoys playing the game. I'm not real. These guys are better than me, so I like seeing what is capable of being done in the game.
Yeah. So let's talk about what it means to be a good streamer, because we're probably not talking about the ones who are very just invested in their game. You're probably watching like a D&D game for the people who are in the D&D game.
Yeah.
And it's probably not about how the chat is doing in relating to the people playing. Like the chat might be a active thing going on with it, but they're probably a subset, like a sub conversation that is happening about the game they're watching as opposed to with the game they're watching. Whereas like like some of these guys are having full conversations while they're playing with their chat. Or in some cases I've seen ones where the game is almost like an excuse to be there while they just talk to people, like either Q&As or it just was an opportunity to be like, here's a press release that I'm giving for this thing I'm doing, but in the meantime I'm going to have a video game up that I'm playing because fuck it, why not?
Yeah.
So we talked about how Dr. Disrespect uses green screens, and that is sort of an element of technology allowing them to be sort of superimposed on the screen without like an awkward either a cutout or like a sidebar or even just not seeing them at all. Like having them on camera and present in the game makes them sort of front and center as opposed to like a picture-in-picture kind of thing or something like that. So that's got to be a component of streamers that want to be the reason to tune in. If you're the show and the game you're playing is an incidental part of that, then you've kind of got to be upfront, and that means you're there and you're interesting for whatever reason, and then you get into the interaction with the audience because that's a part of it too. So because you need to be interacting with someone for it not just to be a guy like biting his tongue while he just like kind of like mutters under his breath like, you motherfucker.
Well, being good at the game too is also a must. I mean, people are not going to watch these people if they're not good at the game.
Well, actually, that's a question I have. Are there guys who have like shticks of being bad at the games, or are those just not really there at all?
Not that I tune in. No, not to the people I tune into.
Okay,
there could be, but the people that I tend to watch, they're probably the best at the game. Like I said, besides Dr. Disrespect, he's not the best, but he's an entertainer. But all these other guys, they like Ninja, Tim the Tatman, Shroud, Courage. I can name off a million different streamers, but they're all the best at almost what they do. And when I'm watching that, it's really intriguing to me how somebody could be that good at the game. Especially a mouse and keyboard. I'm a console player, so when I see them, and a lot of times some people have the cameras on their hands and keyboards, and I can't do that. So that's really interesting to me. It almost made me buy a computer myself so I can try it out. So seeing these guys perform at the level they're performing at, I think automatically sets them up high above anybody else and why anybody wants to watch them. And for them to be able to play the game as well as they do, keep you entertained and talking to you. Obviously, they don't talk to everybody,
right?
But a lot of times these guys, they only read the donations that come in now because their chat feed is going so fast you can't see it. But their skill is definitely one of the main reasons why I think they are who they are.
Yeah, so that's then this interesting element of it as well. And I know video game companies have had different reactions to it. Like, the product that you're watching is ultimately the video game, even if the person might be the main show. Like, the excuse for it is the video game. And like in some games, like, or at least sometimes I know that companies have responded not amazingly well to things like Let's Plays. Like, famously, Smash Brothers Brawl had a very invested storyline, and so Smash Brothers 4, they're like, we're not going to have a first player mode because people are just going to watch Let's Plays, and that became like the sort of weird point of contention with people who were fans of that game. They're like, why are you?
Multiplayer, is definitely the big thing.
Well, but what I mean is like the companies themselves have been like unsure of like the place for streaming in terms of what their product is, and so it's interesting to think that like the product is still the video game, but like is this a parasitic component? Is this a symbiotic component? Like, is it a thing that's making games better? And I think in like Fortnite, that is the case. Like, the game is a better game for it, like for people being able to watch it. Like that's why it's so popular, and because it's popular, there's money going into it, and so they can do more with it. It's a lot of these like smaller studio kind of things, even if they become huge, are not, they're not these smaller studio games, even if they've become larger because of their popularity, thrive on like that kind of word of mouth, that kind of viral thing.
Yeah.
Because like it's not first party Microsoft, and it's not Nintendo, and it's not any of these other companies that like automatically they have a built-in audience. Like they don't. So you have to find some way. But then Nintendo and all these like other established ones may not be as cool with it, or initially as cool with it. But like Microsoft clearly is trying to roll with it, like you just cited Mixer. So that's a company that's trying to embrace it. And I know like this generation of consoles has generally been more embracing of it, because like both PS4 and Xbox One, right, have had the ability just to straight
right through from the console.
Yeah, right from the console.
Computer necessary. Yeah.
You know, and it used to be a big hassle having to like get video game footage onto a console, like
capture card and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, like there are whole YouTube feeds about people like how you get video game footage onto a console from like retro gaming, and you know, retro gaming is a big part of a lot of people who have disposable income and the passion to make videos about things are into retro gaming, because that happens to be like the thing they grew up with. Like generally speaking, you have to be an adult to have enough money to like blow on all this stuff. So there is a very strong retro gaming scene in internet culture anyway, as opposed to necessarily what's actually popular, because like the kids aren't necessarily into retro gaming because it's not what they grew up with.
They don't know what it is.
Exactly. Like so, some do, but like they're digging into the history of gaming as opposed to reliving their childhood. Their childhood is now.
It's Fortnite.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And maybe that's an area where like Twitch is particularly strong, as opposed to like the YouTube culture of like video game retrospectives. Like I listen to videos oftentimes in the background about people talking about video games, and so a lot of them are retro discussion ones. And those aren't streaming, and they're a little more composed, but they're also like 30-year-old men having like thoughts about being like, I used to really enjoy this game. Like this was a good time. You know, there's the granddaddy of them all. There's Angry Video Game Nerd, but then there's like SNES Drunk is one I really like. I like GameSack, but these are all YouTubers. They're not streamers. They're not doing this live. And that live component I do find really interesting, because the people who thrive have to have a natural charisma, or it wouldn't work at all. So it is an interesting component of that, because it is so democratic. Anyone can just get on there and go.
Anybody can get on there and pretty much do whatever they want, you know?
And now we're talking about making it even easier. Like circling back to the Stadia announcement and the implications of that. I'm very intrigued at the idea that you can just drop in on someone's like big game. Like that's
play where they're at. You can drop in right there.
Like that is really exciting. That's the arcade component. Like the idea that you've got a line of people playing at an arcade, and I'm going to put a quarter down, and then I'm going to be the next up once like this next person gets knocked out worldwide.
It's going to be wild. I'm very interested in seeing what's going to happen with that, because maybe YouTube even gets bigger with the streaming, because there's going to be a button on the new controller that's going to let you stream right from pressing one button.
Yeah, well, I mean that's
YouTube.
That's just Google's desire to like conquer the world. All right, so let's say Stadia is successful.
Yes.
Hypothetically, it could be. Like it's really cool to imagine. What happens next? Like, is Facebook going to copy this? Is Microsoft going to copy this? Like, the one thing they're doing is they are taking the hardware part of it out, which is interesting to me, because console gaming has typically been at a loss. Like console games or console units, the actual like the PlayStation 1 or your Super Nintendo or your Atari 2600 typically was more expensive for them to make than they made money on, because they made it back up in licenses. So at this point they're taking out that component, which is really weird, and I don't think I've actually seen talked about yet. Like PCs are their own thing. Like there's the glorious PC master race, people who build their own computers and run state of the art hardware that can make you think you're living it right now. But outside of PCs, going to consoles typically are very expensive to produce, and they make the money by selling the games afterwards. This is taking out that component and just being like, you know what? We don't really care about that part of the hardware. We just want to own the living room itself.
Yeah, they do. They want. It's going to be crazy once that launches. The that just being able to play the game on your phone and, pause it when you go to your TV and play it, go to your tablet, go to your computer and play it, is going to be the next big thing. The only thing that worries me is the latency issue. Mm-hmm. Is there going to be latency? Is there going to be a half second to a second delay when you're on that thing?
Well, is this going to change the type of games that are popular? Like the outbreak of smartphones and whatnot kind of changed what games were people played, and some of it's kind of coming back around. But like prior to the touchscreen phone, every single phone you bought had Tetris loaded on it or games like it, and it was you could. It was the crosshairs, and you had a functioning system for that. Touchscreens come out, and all of a sudden, the type of game that's popular changes. Like tower defenses became really popular because it was easy to place them. Yeah, temple runs are another one, and it's kind of changing. And gaming is a lot harder now on like a smartphone to like get a popular one. Like like there's the Fortnites where it's like a port of another system, and that's interesting that's popular.
And that's on mobile too.
Yeah, exactly. That's interesting that they've made it over there. Yeah. And there's some of the ones that still sort of have maintained, but like I don't feel like I see the diversity of experimentation that I used to, even if it was kind of focused on ones that were good for thumb formats or for like touchscreen formats. But like, will that sort of broad appeal? Will hardware limitations dictate what games become popular in the future? The same way that the 2D platform got killed by virtue of the hardware not being as like meant for it. Like, are we going to see turn-based games become more popular again because that's going to not have an issue with like my internet connection having to be kind of shitty? Like, are we going to see like specific kinds of games become the more popular thing, or is it just going to force people to get better connections everywhere?
I almost feel like the multiplayer side of things, your fast action shooter games, I don't know if those are going to be good on Stadia. Because like I said, if there's latency, nobody can play like that when you're live, you're in it, and when 2 bullets is what gets you killed, or not shooting fast enough, not turning fast enough.
Yeah.
I think the more single player based games, storyline based games are going to be what's going to be big on that.
Okay, maybe cooperative games instead of
Co-op
competitive
games,
ones. Yeah,
nothing really fast and competitive.
Yeah, maybe it will shift it back towards like co-op kind of. Like maybe it's still FPSs, like first-person shooters, but it becomes ones where like you're a squad and people can jump in and be part of your squad, and maybe you have a lot of hit points, so it's not a big deal if you get shot a few times, kind of thing. And it'll still be intense, but that intensity will be different. That intensity will be directed towards the chance that you might have a little bit of lag for a few seconds there.
Something that's not going to impact you dying because of that. Games like there's a new game now called Division 2. Division 2 is a co-op multiplayer shooter game. That'll probably work good on there because you're basically playing PvE. You're just shooting against computers, and you're not shooting against other live people. So that games like that will work on there for sure.
I wonder. I mean, like, there's also probably going to be some limitations in terms of how much can be loaded at a time. Like the fetch quest kind of games, like the Mario 64 and the Banjo-Kazooie. Those games came out because they could build one big arena, but they couldn't make it sprawling. They had limits to how long you could go before you'd have to load a new section. So they would have these levels that you had to go, retrace every step to like find everything that was on it. As a result of the hardware limitations. They wanted to have big 3D interactive environments, so they built them, but because the hardware wouldn't let you just continue to go, they had to give you a reason to stay in that one spot all the time.
Yeah.
And then you jump to the next generation, and all of a sudden you have like Liberty City and Grand Theft Auto, where you have a full city to explore, and suddenly the fetch quest game is gone. And like now there's nostalgia and retro games designed like that, but like you can even see it with games.
Open world stuff,
Yeah, like Jak and Daxter, for example. The first one in the series is very much like a Mario 64 style game in that, even though it's sprawling and the hardware was impressive that it could present this huge world, it it was built along the thought process that the previous generation had, and then once they built it, the next two games shifted more towards sort of like missions where you're traveling through larger areas and like more like kind of gunplay as they like got better with their controls. That the game format shifted to meet what the hardware now allowed for and what became popular as a result. And I am curious with something like this where it's going to be loading onto your device. You're going to like, will it create like a scenario where we're back into smaller like areas again because it's just streaming, and so like they may not want a ton of data, like whatever cache system, like however, like is it going to be truly like over the connection, or is there going to be some amount of data being stored locally just in that short term?
It would have to be.
I mean, it has to be, right? Yeah. Like I can't imagine like the delay on like sending your signal all the way there and back, and for every single motion that you do, it sounds crazy to me. Like that has to have some amount of data.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a sort of there's going to be some type of latency there.
Yeah, like even streaming music nowadays, which is we haven't really talked about other media. Everything's streaming now, but like even music, which is theoretically the smallest kind of like file size we're talking about. Like even that has buffering, or like how Netflix, for example, has like low res until all of a sudden it's buffered enough, and then all of a sudden it's at 4K.
Google's found a way.
But they can't have. They can't have, because even if they found a way in Silicon Valley where everyone has like fiber optics, like the majority of the country doesn't have that.
They're claiming 5 seconds boot up. A boot up in 5 seconds. You click the link, anything that's compatible to have a link. 5 seconds, it's going to load up, and you're in the game.
I guess what I'm wondering is this going to dictate then game development in interesting ways? And I'm curious to see what that means. Like what other hypothetical ways will the format of gaming change as a result of the advanced technology that we're being presented with? It's really cool. I mean, this is impossible questions.
It is. It's I don't know, man. I don't think Stadia can change anything. I don't think it's gonna wipe out everything else. There's no way.
Yeah. I mean, the first generation won't. Like, there's no way it's going to. I mean, that's the thing. Like, people thought that the iPhone was going to kill traditional console gaming. People thought the ubiquity of PCs were going to kill traditional console gaming. Neither of those have happened. Steam hasn't killed the indie game on anything else. It's allowed other sort of formats to reemerge. You see Metroidvania games reemerge. You see, 2D platformers and other kind of things sort of show up again. But it hasn't killed anything. Like, there's still a market for AAA titles on first-party consoles, and there's still a market for these like crazy over-the-top builds for games that can't run on anything aside from the most cutting edge.
Yeah.
So we're going to see all of that, at least for a little while. And will it kind of shift again after that? Who can say? I mean, there's also something to be said for the gimmicks, like the things that are sort of new ways of approaching games, like with like the Wii, with the Wiimotes, or touchscreens. Like, what I'm curious to see how gaming evolves and changes with the new technology that's being presented.
I almost feel like it's hard to just play on your phone. I think you need that controller if you're going to be playing these games sometimes.
Well, these ones, yeah. Like, but there are games...
The new games, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are games designed for it that make sense. And there are games that translate fairly well even from older styles. Like, I really like old school JRPGs on my phone because they play pretty well. Like, Chrono Trigger plays pretty well because it was already turn-based anyway.
Yeah, FPS games are just... It's hard to play.
Oh, it's a pain in the ass.
It's too.
Even a Legend of Zelda style game is a pain in the ass on that. Like, just having that like real-time action component is annoying. But like a Fire Emblem style strategy game is not that bad.
Yeah.
Because it's basically just super chess. So we'll see. Like, and I wonder if that means that like you'll see more effort put into games that are a little bit slower. Or like, will that have that sort of short-term kind of impact on it, or maybe the technology just will be like sort of a novelty. I mean, it could also just fail.
I'm interested because two big companies have went in with this. id, which is the creators of Doom, and Ubisoft, which is Assassin's Creed. You got Rainbow Six, which is a real big competitive game right now. So I'm really interested in seeing what's going to happen with this.
Do you think Twitch has a chance of competing if YouTube gains this massive competitive advantage of also being the platform for the gaming?
If they're claiming what they say they can do, games for anybody, anywhere, you can stream right to YouTube with the press of a button. And I think I think Twitch will always be there. We'll still have a chance, but I think they'll lose a lot of people. I think a lot of people will switch because it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you know, a lot of people on Twitch are still going to stay there because they're top dogs. They have the clients, they have the subscribers, they have the kids wanting to watch them every day.
Right.
But who knows if they switch? They're not. You think they're not going to follow them? They're going to follow them. They'll follow them.
Some of them will. I mean, it's curious because like it's interesting. Just like Twitch is kind of the sort of like side platform that like if you're into Twitch, you're really into Twitch.
Yeah.
Or you have a or you're just not that into it. Like you have a.
I'm into watching, but I'm not into streaming on there. I'm just not.
But what I meant was YouTube is so huge. Like that's so big, and like there's competition from like Facebook because Facebook is so big and wants to get on it too. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
About that. Sorry.
But Twitch is like its side thing that people kind of forget about because it's not. Who owns Twitch?
Amazon.
Oh shit! Yeah, that's right. I forgot. I was like they're owned by someone.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the thing. Maybe that's the component that we're forgetting about. That maybe Amazon steps up their game and like rolls out a competitor because they've got their own.
I think a lot of people, I actually think Microsoft might be headed in that direction.
Oh, I'm sure.
They're already talking about Xbox, Microsoft on the Nintendo Switch, PC, tablets, phones. So I know E3 is coming up soon in June, and I think that's something that they might be talking about.
Yeah. Well, I think this has been a good like bit of both a discussion about a topic that I'm intrigued by and then how it's dictated by the changes of technology.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining me for this conversation. It's been
no problem.
It's hard, man. I'm kind of just lost in like the possibilities right now, which, you know, at first, like I wanted to go into a deep dive with you about like this thing that I am interested in, but I'm not deep on, which is like the Twitch streaming component.
Yeah.
But
I mean, there's only so much you can talk about. I mean, it's pretty basic, I guess. It's pretty
I think there's a value to espousing the virtue of any type of media, so that because there's a tendency when it's a thing that you don't do to be like, oh, that's just not my thing, it must be bad, you know. See me in high school talking about country music, I claim to hate it even though I couldn't really articulate why. That's so I wanted to be positive and sort of explore that, and that's all cool, and maybe some people who are into one type of gaming but weren't into this type of gaming might find out some more, and that's a fun idea. But the news has sort of created this sort of big hypothetical world that I kind of wanted to explore with you, and I'm excited to talk to you about it. So thank you for coming on the show and being part of this weird round robin.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, man.
So where can people find you?
I am on Xbox Live. My gamer tag is YoPurple, YO. And I am currently building a stream on Mixer right now. I decided to go with Mixer because it's not as saturated, like I said. And they have some things that Twitch doesn't have that I like Hype Zone. I don't know if you heard of that. It's basically a BR channel for every BR game that somehow they know when you're in a final end of the match situation, and they will host a group of 100 or so people, bring them to your channel, watch you at the end of the game. And
so it's like NFL Red Zone?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's awesome. I didn't know that they did that. That's so cool.
Someone for like me, that's good because I don't have a big following right now. Somebody can come into my stream and they will see, oh, he just took out the last 5 guys. He's good. Maybe I'll follow him and I'll go check him out some more, you know? So, I'm at mixer.com/YoPurple. So, if anybody wants to check me out, don't stream a lot because of my work schedule, but I do a lot on the weekends. But Mixer is where you'll find me.
Cool. Well, yeah, everyone should be following you on Mixer if they're interested in streaming games. Like it's Like, definitely, it's fun to talk to you in general, and like, I know you have a lot of passion for this. So again, thank you for checking out that. You should also, after that, come check out certainpov.com, where we've got this regular show, Fun and Games with Matt and Jeff.
I'll definitely check it out, man.
Neither of us are Matt and Jeff right now.
This is definitely fun, man.
Thank you, man. We've got a ton of other shows on it. There are the other shows that I normally host.
Okay.
So I am also the host of Another Pass podcast, where I do deep dive interviews with people to discuss movies that have already come out that they might have been good, they might have been bad, but like, what ways at the time of production could we have made them better?
That'd be a good podcast for me to listen to, because I don't get around to watching a lot of movies, or have watched a lot of movies in general. So your opinions probably, and other people's opinions, would probably be good for me.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun with that. I just recently did an episode on Grease 2, which is a notoriously strange musical.
Yes.
And before that, just did Fantastic Four, both the most recent reboot attempt as well as the sequel to the previous effort on that one.
Okay,
and
which one was that? Was that the one with Jessica Alba? No,
yeah, the second Jessica Alba one, and then we did
Okay.
Fanforstic with Michael B. Jordan.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are fun exercises, and it's great because I get a lot of guests on that one. I am
Okay.
also the host of Men of Steel, which is a Superman appreciation podcast.
Okay.
I would love people to come check us out. We talk about Superman, movies Superman has been in, TV shows, and then characters who are based on Superman. So like,
I've been seeing you post a lot of things on Twitter about conversations.
yes, yeah, I've been talking a lot about that on Twitter. So check out those shows. I am also the host of Scruffy Nerf Herders, which is a Dungeons and Dragons game set in the Star Wars universe. I am the dungeon master for that one. So
wow.
also a fun one. Those are the shows I do on Certain POV. I'm sure, assuming if you're listening to this, you're familiar with what Matt and Jeff do. But have a good it'd be nice to like build the community.
Oh, for
and if
sure.
you enjoy the community, we've got Discord, which we have got a server going. Come check it out. If you go to our website,
one of those, so I will follow you.
yeah, if you come to our website, we've got a link to it. All of the shows on Certain POV have chat rooms. We're having tons of conversations about new episodes or things that are going on, and the guys who stream are all advertising on it. So that would be a good thing to like segue on for you.
Okay.
All of that can be found at certainpov.com. I'm Case Aiken,
I'm Neil Smith.
and happy gaming.